I spent probably too much time looking at people's glasses in this movie because Bowen
Yeah.
Yang's character has these most ridiculous
Yes.
kind of glasses on as well.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking Wicked.
If you haven't already subscribed, just go ahead and ding that little bell, hit the subscribe button. That way you're notified every time we drop a film. We don't make films, James.
We do not.
We drop
No.
videos. We'll
Very
let you know
modest
when we drop
videos.
another review video. Won't cost you a cent. Show us some love. James?
Okay, yes, Wicked Part 1. This is the first half of the new, big, lavish adaptation of the Stephen Schwartz Broadway musical, which in turn, obviously, is an adaptation of the book by Gregory Maguire, Wicked, which is a reinvention of the Wicked Witch of the West's story from The Wizard of Oz. So it's got a lot of precedent, a lot of IP to draw from. And I got to be honest, though, coming into this, I was wholly unfamiliar with this story, this part of the story, and with the musical. I've seen all of the Oz movies: Wizard of Oz, Return to Oz, The Wiz, Oz the Great and Powerful. But I did not really know where this was going or what it was going to do. How about you?
Oh. I'm the complete opposite. I'm fairly conversant with the story. I've seen the live production of it. And so I've seen not with Christine Chenoweth and Adina Menzel, but so I knew where the story was. I will confess, James, that normally I try to go into these reviews with you blind, not knowing where you're coming from. But true confession, I did listen to you with James Ross yesterday, so I know how you feel about this film.
Okay.
And I concur. The one thing I want to highlight,
Mm.
and I'll let you, because you're the one who raised the issue or raised this point, and I just want to confirm it. For me, Adriana Grande blew it away. Her comedic timing, she was so funny, and you raised that issue. And so when I went in to watch it yesterday with that playing in my mind, I just kept thinking, I actually think James underrated her as much as you praised her. She's that good.
Well, I was talking about Ariana Grande. I don't know
What
who
did I
Adriana.
say?
You said Adriana Grande.
I told you I butcher names. Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
I'm vaguely familiar with her.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, this was the big thing for me. I mean, I am not by any means an Ariana Grande fan. No, I mean, I don't dislike her music. I just don't listen to it. It's not for me. I'm nearly 50 years old. I'm not listening to Ariana Grande music. Sorry.
The girl
But
has some pipes, though. The girl
she,
has some
I was aware of
pipes.
that. I was aware she's very small. She's got like this sort of multi-octave range. She's very good at what she does. I hadn't really seen her act in very much. I understand she was a bit of a child star, came up through the ranks at Nickelodeon, but I hadn't seen any of that. And so I think I'd seen her in Don't Look Up. She has a very small part, essentially playing
Oh
sort of a
yeah.
version of herself in that. So I came into this going, okay, well, she's been cast because she's a singer. Let's see how she goes. And she was incredible. And obviously her singing, fantastic. But as an actress, I thought just her comedic timing, her understanding of physical comedy, pratfall, slapstick, how she, the things she keeps doing with her hair,
yes.
which it was perfect. And regardless, I think, or in spite of what I thought of a lot of the rest of the film, she really sort of got me through it because thankfully she's on screen quite a lot of the time. And I know it's less her story than it is Elphaba's story, although she obviously has an arc as well where she becomes more fully formed as Glinda the Good Witch. I thought she was absolutely wonderful. She raised the bar every time she was on screen. She lit up. I mean, her character obviously is like literally iridescent, but she lit up the stage whenever she was on there, and I perked up, paid attention whenever she was there, and she was great. She didn't put a foot wrong. I was stunned, quite frankly, and in a good way.
Yeah, to imbue that character with both the selfish narcissism as well as a human being that you empathize with, that was a fine line to walk. This is an extremely nuanced character, whether you see her as Galinda or Glinda. She is so self-centered, and yet she avoids making her the cliche mean girl at school because underneath that insecurity is someone who is desperately longing to be loved and
Hmm.
appreciated for who she is. And Ariana Grande manages to flesh out this three-dimensional character in a way. And this is not to take, we'll talk about Alphaba in a second, but I just really was impressed because, like yourself, I know very little about Ariana Grande, other than I remember a terrorist attack in Manchester a few years ago
Oh
at
yeah,
one of her
right.
concerts.
Mm.
That's what sticks out in my mind. But barring that, almost nothing, to the point where I mispronounced her name. But when I saw her acting chops, and like you said, the comedic timing, I'm in a fairly full cinema. I mean, this just released in Hong Kong, and the cinema was pretty packed.
Mm.
And the laughter centered around her actions.
Yeah, no, it was a real revelation for me. It was fantastic, and it really sort of, as I said, got me through the movie because I wasn't wholly familiar with it in any way. You know, I had a gist. Okay, it was the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West. I knew that, and
Yeah.
as it played out, there was one or two songs in there that I was like, I think I've heard this before. I think I'd heard Popular before, and I think I'd heard Defying Gravity, which I think are the two big showstoppers. And I was like, okay, yes, somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, this has been playing in the background in a situation at which I was
Sure.
present. You know, something like that. But I'd never really knowingly sat down and listened to these. I'd certainly never been to the show or read the book or anything like that. And it felt to me like one of those many big live action adaptations of Disney animated films that are
Mhm.
packing out the box office these days that Disney is churning out year on year on year. You know, we've got a big Lion King prequel coming this year. So it kind of felt like that to me. So it's big and it's brash and it's garish and it's packed full of CGI. You know, it still feels very theatrical in its musical numbers and the performances, you know, embracing its Broadway roots. But at the same time, it's making the most of that limitless CGI space that it now has in order to do sort of castles and animals and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
in a way that you can't do on stage. And for the most part, I'm not really a fan of those movies. I don't warm to them particularly. I can appreciate the artistry, but they're not for me. And I felt that that was still the case here for a lot of it.
Yeah, I think one of the problems I had with the film, and overall I enjoyed it. I'll play my cards right now, show my cards right now. Um, but I thought essentially, and it's something that filmmakers are falling into more and more, it seems. Peter Jackson takes a Hobbit book this big and spreads it over three movies, and you spread so much butter over that toast, and it just gets thinner and thinner.
Mm,
And so, if you're familiar, the Wicked Part One ends this film with Defying Gravity, which is essentially the intermission during the musical. So this 2 hour and 45 minute film is just the first half of the musical, and it feels it at times. It's like they're stretching out scenes that don't need to be stretched quite so far. They could easily chop 20 to 40 minutes off of this film and nothing would have been lost. Um, that was one of my issues, was the pacing. You mentioned also the CGI. Like a lot of people, I was getting ready for the Defying Gravity scene. I have a show tunes playlist on my Spotify, has Christina Chenoweth and Idina Menzel doing Defying Gravity, the whole interchange. And every time I listen to it, it gives me goosebumps. It is so powerful. It is arguably one of the best, if not the best, intermission break songs in musical history. I mean, it vies with Les Miserables One Day More.
mm,
It's that good. And what they did, I felt wrong with it, is when they stretched the scene out so long, even my wife said the scene is just taking forever. But then, because that song is so powerful, they dilute it with all the CGI. She's falling out the window. When she finally gets the broom, she starts doing all these, there's all these spins and she's going all around, and it's like, no, let this song speak for itself. It is powerful. When you see it in a musical, they don't have all the CGI. If you see it in the stage performance, she's essentially on a platform, and her dress billows out. So when you can't see the platform, she raises up high above everybody in that powerful voice. So if you look, or so if you need to find me, look to the western sky. Someone told me lately, everybody deserves a chance to fly. And when she says it, it's so powerful because all the guards are so small compared to her, just towering over them on the stage. And that whole feeling I felt was lost in a CGI fest that diminished what could have been a much more powerful scene.
Right. I mean, I don't have any frame of reference for it. I felt that it did kind of work okay, and I think a lot of that is to do with
I think if you're not making comparisons, it does work okay. Yeah.
I think it's the inherent strength of the song does come through in the end. But I can see certainly how. I mean, it felt like a showstopper. It really does feel like, boom, curtain down at the end of it. It has that heft and that sort of weight to it, and I can only imagine how it must look on stage. And here, sure, she's falling out of the tower and she's whizzing around. You got armies of flying monkeys around, and it does feel a bit sort of chaotic, even with no frame of reference, nothing to compare it to. So I totally believe you that's how it played. I think it works fine, and it works well. But I think it's just a really good song.
Yes.
And so to
it
end
still
on
gave
that,
me goosebumps. It still gave me goosebumps even in the cinema.
Right, and I'm a sucker for those kind of moments in any story where it's that moment of manifestation. It's that moment of realization. It's like, here is my true form kind of thing. I am become whatever it is. And this is obviously a great example of one of those dramatic moments. And so I think, for the most part, that worked. But I do want to go back to your first point about it really did feel like it was being stretched out for no good reason. I mean, I get it that you want to split this into two films, and that's totally fine. I mean, I imagine the Broadway show is probably, an hour and a half each half, or an hour and a half, then an hour, or whatever. They normally run about 2.5 hours. But you know what? You can stop it at the same point that they stopped it and have the movie be 100 minutes long. And I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. What it really felt like is like a sort of discount Harry Potter movie for so much of its runtime, because it felt like they were spending so much time with them at school, just doing school stuff, and you're like, okay, you have to understand we've sat through a lot of Harry Potter. We're very familiar with the idea of magical schools for gifted children, and the argument, I guess, will be here. Yes, but this came first. The source material of this, the book, and then the musical, came out before the bulk of the Harry Potter stuff did. And you're like, yes, but a lot of people have seen those, and a lot of people have read those, and you can't avoid the fact that we have been inundated with a lot of this kind of world, this kind of character building, these kind of situations already. And now you're choosing to just give us more of it to pad out your own product. It's like, focus more on the other stuff. The whole animal issue, which I felt it felt very underdeveloped, underexplored, and then it almost feels like it's kind of come to an end by the end of the first movie, because it's been revealed that I mean, I don't know where the story goes in the second half. I assume it engages more actively with the Wizard of Oz story.
Yeah, but the animal issue and the growing fascism develops. I mean, for me, this is another reason why the film, I'm sorry, the play and now subsequently the film resonates so well as we have these discussions. People say, we're using fascism too much, but I think we're all aware that authoritarianism and a lot of the democratic norms that we've become used to are under threat today. And so this theme is timeless and very appropriate for what the world's experiencing right now. So coming back to your point is delve into that, lean into it, rather than just give a cursory moment or hat tip to it. Make that the theme rather than another Harry Potter, a school for the gifted
Absolutely, because I mean, my understanding is that a lot of the extra stuff is just more time spent with her and Michelle Yeoh's character, honing her skills, and it was like, and it felt it really brushed over this idea of encroaching fascism, this idea that animals can all talk and that there's only one left, and that it's already pretty, it's being enforced pretty strongly, and then you've got that final tipping point where they take the goat guy
Yeah.
out. It's like, well, yeah, explore more of that.
Oh,
You
and
know, that's
the whole metaphor, if we put them in cages, we steal their ability to speak, and
right.
it's like, oh, we just have to look at Putin and authoritarian regimes around the world, jailing dissidences, handing out sentences. Not that that's happening anywhere.
Oh, no,
We,
nowhere
we, we
else.
have we have no idea where that could be happening. But if
Mm-mm.
we can just silence these people, we won't have to deal with them anymore. I mean, this is being played out in a wonderful metaphor in this film, and it's not really leaning into it to the degree that they have the potential to do so.
Yeah, no, it's a real shame, when the material is there. It wouldn't involve them actually sort of adding a layer of subtext. It's all there. Just explore those moments a little bit more. Maybe they just felt that they didn't have the confidence to dig deeper into the powerful stuff, and it was just easier to do. Well, we'll just do another classroom scene,
Yeah.
where we can show off a bit more sort of CGI or stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, I don't need it. If you're not going to
Yeah.
add anything interesting, just hand in a 100-minute movie rather than a 160-minute movie.
Well, it makes me think that I don't think in the Broadway or the West End, the stage show, they actually accentuate the fascism or the animals
Mm.
issues any more so, but it's not diluted by endless interactions at the school. And I think that's the problem is the important stuff is diluted by this bloat. And I don't know
Hmm.
why, the editing in the editing room, they didn't realize, this is a long film that doesn't have to be this long.
I guess we're just at a time now where big movies have to be big and they have to be long. And I have no issue with long movies. I mean, we were just talking before going on air about hopefully seeing The Brutalist soon, and that's kind of
Mhm.
clocks in at 3.5 hours, three and a quarter hours, something like that. But it has to warrant it. There seems to be a notion right now where if you're making a big studio kind of holiday movie or whatever, it has to clock in over 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense even from a business point of view, because the longer it is, the fewer screenings you can get per day,
Mhm.
so the fewer tickets you're selling. So I don't really understand where the logic is behind it. And when it's as flaccid and vacuous and sort of obviously just overinflated as this is. I know I just said it was flaccid and overinflated. I'm aware of that, but so what I mean is it's got a lot of nothing in it.
Yeah.
I think there's a serious
It's
problem.
impotent. Impotent.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as we know in Hong Kong, with the lessened screen times, they get you in the tail end because they let you know this is a long running film, and so we're going to charge you more for it.
Well, this is it. That's
Yeah,
definitely true.
we should move on to Alphaba. Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say we haven't talked about Cynthia Erivo yet, who is
yeah,
the star of the movie, and so we
yeah.
really should do that. I think that the casting certainly makes sense. It really helps sort of underscore all of that subtext about sort of racial discrimination and inherent prejudice and all of the rest of it. I know that Idina Menzel played her most famously on Broadway, but it totally makes sense to have a performer of color in that role, and I think she's absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
Her roots, I think. I mean, I saw her in Harriet as Harriet Tubman a few years ago, where she got
Okay.
Oscar nominated for that. But were her roots musical Broadway stage? I know she's from the UK, but did she
Yeah,
come up
I
through the
thought
West
she's
End?
just. I think she's just actor. I don't know if she's done a lot of stage. I could be wrong there. I was honestly unfamiliar with her until this role.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, no, it seems like she came up through the Royal Academy of Performing Arts, etc., etc., etc. I
Okay.
should have probably looked. I think it was theatre that which she really kind of made a name for herself. Um, yeah, she did. She was in The Color Purple, the stage show, the color musical of The Color Purple, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Uh,
I mean, she brings an incredibly grounded character. Like you can't help but love Elphaba. She, from the moment she comes
oh,
on
sure.
and embodies the character, you sense someone who is wise beyond her years, even though she plays a young girl and she's learning and to be comfortable in her own skin, no pun intended.
Mm.
But even before that, you get the feel in her family, and then when she ultimately moves into her school surroundings, she's the smartest kid in the room.
Oh, without a doubt, for sure, because she's got glasses on.
That's
That.
right. And they're really
I'm
cool
being
ones
facetious,
too
but
that do the little frames. Yeah.
oh, I mean, I spent probably too much time looking at people's glasses in this movie because Bowen
Yeah.
Yang's character has these most ridiculous
Yes.
kind of glasses on as well.
When
I mean,
Bowen Yang looks into the eyes of is it Fiero? And
oh
says,
yeah,
just I'll do anything you want. He just did that so I'm a big fan of him on Saturday Night Live. And so seeing him in this film, and he's not in it a lot, but he has a few great comical moments.
oh yeah, he does. He certainly makes the most of the screen time that he has. I mean, it's kind of interesting that Cynthia Erivo is 37,
Mhm.
and for a lot of this movie, she's essentially playing a teenager. And you're kind of like, okay, and she's it's not that she's selling it, but or rather, she's selling it without necessarily being convincing, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't think you
Yeah.
believe for 1 minute that she is a teenager, but
Mm.
it works in a way that then further accentuates the transformation towards the end. When she does turn. I
Yeah.
mean, Ariana Grande looks much younger, and she is a few years younger, but she's still
I
in
think
her
in 20
30s.
years, Ariana Grande will look pretty much the same. I mean, she has
I
this
get that impression, yeah.
she has this eternal, ethereal, waif-like quality that
Mm.
you're almost afraid to break her. Like she would just shatter into 1,000 pieces.
Yes, she does. It looks like a sort of porcelain doll or something like that,
Yeah.
doesn't she?
Yeah.
But I mean, Cynthia Erivo, she is fantastic. She's obviously got a great voice, great range. Having a quick look, yeah, was in The Color Purple and Sister
Hmm.
Act, and all of these. So she does seem to have come up through musical theatre. I don't think I'd seen her in anything on screen until she was in Widows, the Steve McQueen sort of heist thriller
Yeah.
from 2018, which is
See, that always
relatively
throws me
recent.
off. If you talk about a Steve McQueen heist thriller, I'm going into a completely
You're
different
thinking
era
Bullet.
in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, different Steve McQueen. This is the director of 12 Years a Slave and Hunger
Yes.
and
Yes.
what's his new one? Blitz on Apple TV right now. But yeah, so she popped up in that, and I think I was like, oh, who's that? I don't know who that is. And I think that was one of her first big sort of transitions from theater to the screen. And she's made a very comfortable home for herself, and that's great. She was
Yeah,
really
I
good
mean,
as Harriet Tubman. So
both of the characters, Elphaba and Glinda, the actresses embody those characters so well to the point where I don't know if you caught it, but of course you caught it. But when Indina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, who inaugurated these characters so many years ago, when they come on and they basically are doing a reenactment of the show and how each one kind of splits off with their respective counterpart and has this moment with them. Just as somebody who's familiar with that generation of the number of years that this show has been out, and these are such beloved actresses who embodied these characters originally, just for that little tip of the hat to us, who are aware of it, was like, I'm going, Tam, that she goes, I know who it, like in the dark. I know who they are, Steve. Oh, but this is so cool. This is.
yeah, no, that's funny. I mean, I think I only know about them because of the way that they are pushed in front of the camera. And I'm just a bit, I suppose, savvy to that notion and to that little sort of gimmick that seems to happen so from time to time in this kind of show. So you're kind of like on the lookout for it anyway. I mean, I didn't know who Idina Menzel was until Frozen came out. And then I was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, she's apparently big on Broadway, whatever. I just have no exposure to Broadway.
Remember when John Travolta butchered her name at the Oscars?
I do. Adina Dazeem or something he called her.
Yeah, he just was. Yeah, even I can't butcher a name that bad.
Well, I don't know. You're doing quite well today.
Adriana Grande, baby. Yeah. It's Adriana.
And there have been a couple of other things you've said, and I'll be like, I'm not going to stop you every time you say something wrong, but it's like. I'm not that much of an asshole. So.
I was going to say the secondary cast: Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Michelle Yeoh seems to. I mean, it seems like this is where she's at now,
Mhm.
And ever
She's the
since she's
wizened mentor lady
yeah
who's the
mentor
McGonagall
mother.
of Hogwarts,
Yeah, and it's like fine, she's getting obviously a lot more work internationally than before, and if she's going to keep doing these kind of parts, fine. I don't think they're very interesting roles generally, and it doesn't fill me with excitement when I see her that she's popping up in one of these things. Sad to say, but that's the truth. It's like we know that she's capable of so much more than this.
Yeah,
Um, and yet this is what she seems to be stuck doing now, and it's like, well,
yeah,
okay, cool, I'm sure you're making very good money doing it, and
yeah,
new
and
generations are being introduced to you, and hopefully they will go back and explore all of your other work, and you are a massive action star who's been around for
yeah,
decades. But yeah, sure, be
yeah.
be 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 this slightly sort of uptight bitchy old lady in movies if that's what gets you the work. So
Do you think Jeff Goldblum, though, is becoming almost a cliche of himself, that he's become the go-to guy whenever we need the oddball character? Like, let's do a crazy Zeus for
hmm
chaos, Jeff Goldblum. Let's have a crazy Wizard of Oz, Jeff Goldblum. It's not that I think he's bad in these roles. I think he does them quite well. I'm thinking of the Thor movie where he plays the
the
game
games
host,
master, yeah,
games
yeah.
master, and I enjoy him in all these roles, but it's almost like he's becoming the go-to cliche for this oddball character.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, in some way, he's a bit like Nicolas Cage in that way, that he's become kind of
Oh,
like you say, like a parody unto himself. He is his own brand, and he can dial up the goofiness or dial it down, but you know that you can't really give him any direction or anything like
yeah.
that. You hire him and you just sort of
Let him
push him in front
go.
of a camera and let
Yeah.
him go, and you don't know what you're going to get from him, but it's going to be good and people are going to
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he is getting like that. But then he's pretty old now as well, and same kind of thing. It's like he's just going to show up and go, yeah, sure, I'll do it. What do you need
I,
me to do now?
as you were saying that before we started recording, I was mentioning how this morning I was watching The Big Chill. I'd never seen The Big
Mm.
Chill, one of
Oh
the
yeah, he's
films,
a
classic Lawrence Kasdan film. But yeah, watching Jeff Goldblum, I just thought, wow, guy's been around. This movie's from '84. It's 40 years
mm.
ago, and he's still, I mean, he's had some longevity that is to be, really honored.
Yeah, I mean, he never really went away. He was in so many things. Like in the late '70s, he's in like sort of Invasion of the Body Snatchers in '78, and
Yes, yeah,
going back even further. If I bothered to think about it, he's a big part of the '80s, and then once you get into the '90s, once he did Jurassic Park in
yeah.
'93, I mean, that sort of cemented his status as the kind of eccentric intellectual. So he's
Mhm.
done that role many, many times. He was in Independence Day doing essentially the same character, and it
The
goes on.
Fly when he was the
Well,
leading
you're
man,
sure. Yeah, 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 I'm sure. And so it just goes on and on and on. And so he will be around until he's not around anymore, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it's fair play, you can't hold it against him. Everybody loves him, but I
Oh,
think it's got to the stage now. I don't think people are going to go to see something because he's in it anymore.
right.
I think that's fair to say.
But he has that
Because,
he's got that enviable persona that no one has ever turned off by him either. Nobody
oh
thinks,
no,
oh, Jeff Goldblum, boy, was he miscast in that. Nobody ever says that about Jeff Goldblum. He's an add value. Like you said, nobody goes to a film because Jeff Goldblum is in it, but he adds value to any film he's in.
yeah, I think that's totally fair. And will continue to do so, and he'll continue to get work. I mean, everybody seems to love him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and casting him as the great and powerful Oz, sure, that makes
Sure.
total sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he can be this kind of charlatan who has a malevolent side, but also has sort of a heart, and he can win people over. Yeah, yeah, it's perfect casting.
Yeah.
It's almost so obvious that you don't even give it a second thought. You're kind of like, hey, well, cool, yeah, of course he is.
Well, James, as we draw this to a close, what's going to be our standard of measurement for part one of Wicked?
Oh,
Pointy hats.
well, yeah, let's do pointy hats because that is somewhat symbolic. Well, it opens with the shot of the pointy hat in the puddle,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
And
It's
then,
amazing how iconic a scene like that is. We immediately know where we're at with a bucket tilted over, a
mm,
puddle of water, and a pointed hat. I mean, there are some moments in this that any good Wizard of Oz watcher, when they hop on the bike and the dogs the creature that they've got. I forgot which creature they got out of the cage, but it's
A lion
reminiscent of the
cub, I think,
beginning.
wasn't it?
Was it a lion cub? I
Yeah,
forgot
I
what
think
it
so.
was.
Yeah.
But it's reminiscent when she gets on the bike, she puts it in the basket of the opening scene of Wizard of Oz. I mean, there's a number of scenes like that where any Wizard of Oz aficionado is going to say, "Oh, that's that moment."
Oh,
But
definitely. I mean, it's been so ingrained in the culture for so long. I mean, what came out in 39?
nine,
And obviously,
yeah,
they were books before that, weren't they? I
yeah.
mean, I actually went rummaging through my endless collection. I actually dug out my old copy of The Wizard of Oz. This must be like the 65th anniversary DVD box set.
Yeah.
So this is probably from like 2004. So already this is pretty old. This is like a 20-year-old box set. And this has got all kinds of stuff on it. This has even got on it silent film versions of the Wizard of Oz films from 1910, 1914, 19, which I've obviously not
Wow.
watched. But it's like it's been, as an IP, and I hate to talk about things like in those terms, but it's been around for, as long as cinema has at the very least.
Well, how many pointed hats are you going to give part one of Wicked, James?
Okay. So for me, this is not a film aimed at me, and I come into it with open mind and all the rest of it. I'm not out to hate it, but I'm not predisposed to love it either. I'm going to give it 3 because I think for long parts of it I was not bored, but I was just sort of in neutral. And then a song kicks in, and a lot of the songs were quite good. As I said, popular and what's it called, Defying Gravity were well done, I think. But for me, it's Ariana Grande steals the show. She's an absolute revelation. Can't wait to see more of her in the second part. I will now be looking forward to part 2, if only to see her in it, and hopefully, I think she's deserving of awards attention for this performance, and I wonder if it's going to open the doors for more, perhaps even non-musical roles for her in the future, because I think she can do it. So I'm going to give it 3, and at least one of those hats is just for her.
Good deal. I've been wavering between 3.5 and 4. I'm going to be generous and give it a 4, mainly because I just love musicals. I thought by and large this film made it, other than the pacing element and the butter spread over too much bread length of this that just irritated me. I love the characters. I thought they went above and beyond their where I expected them to land. The songs are wonderful. The story's great. I would have liked to see it. I don't necessarily think this needed to be a 2-part. I think they could have done a 2-hour and 45-minute movie and did the whole story, and it would have been fantastic.
I do wonder if they just wanted that Defying Gravity moment to land, and they just needed people to sort of sit back and just stop and take it in, and you can't do that in a movie unless that's the end of the movie, really.
Yeah, and I can certainly sympathize with that because it is one of the great musical numbers. It is a fantastic, powerful song, and so yeah, I'm going to give it 4, and I'm looking very much forward to part 2 to come out next year.
Alrighty.
So that's what we thought about part 1 of Wicked. But what say you? James gave it a 3. I gave it a 4. But maybe you've got a completely different take. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment box below. James?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I understand Ariana Grande has done acting before, particularly on TV. Let me know if anything good is worth watching, bearing in mind I am an old man. Yeah. See you next time.
Not old enough to say Adriana Grande.
Absolutely not.
Till next episode.
Bye-bye.
You're wonderful.